everyone. I'm Kristy Knichel, co-host of the LLC podcast. We're also joined today by Nicole Glenn, CEO of Candor Expedite. It's an honor to introduce listeners to inspiring women who are making a real difference in logistics and supply chain. With the LLC podcast, you'll hear inspirational stories, both personal and professional challenges our guests have overcome, how their backgrounds help to shape who they are today, and how they empower others, give back to their communities, and often the world. Today, I am thrilled to introduce Katie Keich, a powerhouse in the business world. Katie holds multiple leadership positions, including CEO of the esteemed Full Advantage LLC, CFO of Freight Mango, and co-founder of Curant. Prior to her involvement with these remarkable ventures, Katie honed her expertise at Statewide Tax Recovery, LLC, where she served as a COO. She also held prominent positions such as COO at Central Credit Audit, LLC, and VP of Inside Arm, Director of Credit and Collections at Worldwide Express, and a role in customer service at Fortune Brands. With such an impressive repertoire, Katie truly embodies the epitome of experience and expertise. Thanks for being here, Katie. Let's dive right
Oh,
in.
thank you guys for having me. I'm so excited to have this conversation. Like the three of us together is going to be so fun.
So I like in listening to Kristy give your rundown of how badass you are, but how do you have time? Like I see you on Facebook too. Like
Oh,
you're a mama, you are a coach, you are running pretty much 3 companies. Like when do you sleep?
I don't. That's the key. I
Okay.
don't
You
sleep.
work out like a
Um,
like a mother too. You've been on a fitness thing.
I'm on a fitness thing. I totally give credit to doing that every morning and helping to give me the energy to keep going. But my brain doesn't really shut off, so I just keep going. It's great. I just live off the energy of all the things around me, and yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, the fact that you talked about her working around the clock, like getting emails after midnight, 2 in the morning from her. She clearly does. And I asked her the same question the other day, like, do you even see your family? But I think it's awesome though that she's able to do all these things, and even the basketball coach as well. Like, how do you do all this, But anyways, with your extensive background, Katie, in credit and collections, consulting, all things finance, you recently were just appointed co-founder of Curant. So congratulations, first of all. And then
Thank you.
also, can you share with our listeners a little bit more about that journey with Curant, what that is about? How did you become co-founder? Um, you just give us a little bit there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, thank you first of all for the congratulations because that was really exciting. When I started Full Advantage in 2019, I did it under the premise of being able to prove out all the processes and procedures, theories, and brain power that I kind of used to help be one of the key players in helping Worldwide Express hit their goals. And so, with that story behind, ready to carve out my own story. I really was on the search to find the right partner to build software with. I knew all along I wanted to build the software. I knew that eventually the software would be what helped Full Advantage scale and grow itself, but also Full Advantage clients and people that aren't Full Advantage clients be able to benefit from it. And so I met Joe McGee, who is my co-founder and founder. Met him in 2020, early 2020, and we hit it off really quickly. Gave me a advisor agreement to start, and I was just like, listen, his background was in payment processing, saw all the sides of the logistics space as the best way to describe it, right? Because there's so many sides. Do you guys know it's a $280 billion industry? It's just growing, and so I was saying to him that I wanted to be able to bring the solution to help these businesses that were a little bit more archaic in nature, but could really be able to hit their goals by executing on the software. And there bore the relationship. And shortly thereafter, I kind of, flew out to California this past March with my husband, and we celebrated them bringing me on as co-founder, which was really exciting.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's a really interesting story. I think when I even was first talking with you, um, you being like an advisor to them, obviously, like you just discussed, but the fact that you have gotten pulled into that, I think is awesome, especially with having full advantage as your back office business that you're doing with companies like myself. It goes right along with that company as well, and hand in hand. And yeah, I think it's definitely been great for us.
Yeah, the software is definitely going to be what kind of helps the companies to see the solution as more automated and have exception handlers versus doers, right? So I'll never be able and never want to be able to replace the human. And I tell everybody that because it's the human rapport, the relationship that I believe is what made my team and my current team, current meaning my team at Full Advantage, so successful. You can't embody that even with all the AI that's out there. It's not going to happen. But I do believe there's parts of that activity that are repetitious.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I mean, with that being said, and where you are today and having all these different businesses and different things you're doing, I mean, do you have any mentors or early influencers in your life that kind of helped, get you into the seat where you are today, I guess?
It's so funny you say that. My grandmother was definitely my influencer. So she is deceased, but was a powerhouse herself and really carved out the space in her generation where women were home, cooking, cleaning, and doing laundry. She was out being the first female banker in Pennsylvania. And I think even nationally, she got some recognition. And she would be over 90 today, which is pretty crazy. So, like that time frame. And so she led by example by far, and I couldn't wait to kind of follow in that footsteps. And listen, from two mentors that are on this call, this conversation, you two have been hugely inspiring to me, more than you even realize, and what you've done for both your brands and your personal brand, and who you truly are, like outside of these conversations, right? Like you're two of the people I look up to and bounce ideas off the most, and just immediate in-person conversations are like we've known each other for years. So absolutely, good kudos to both of you and for leading the way, and many other people.
I love that, Katie, because I get a lot out of having our conversations too. We were doing these monthlies, which we need to get back to. Life got a little out of hand there.
I still can't figure out how they get off I don't know where it went on the calendar. I really don't.
I know, but just like Kristy, like we talk, and that's the whole thing. It almost turns from a mentorship to like a circle learning, like just even getting that feedback from people who are on their path in whatever way is so impactful. And so it's awesome that we can tell your story too. So maybe other women can kind of knock on your door and go, hey, we want to know how you're doing that. Because it's something that we really need. We need more and more women to step into these challenging spaces and go, all right, maybe I'm not ready. You're never going to be ready, but you dive in, you figure it out. And sometimes they need that conversation from people like yourself, Kristy. So you'll see that people will continually be going, look at her, what she's doing. They'll call you.
That's very true. And I think sitting back watching some of the people like I've mentored or worked with, I learn from them too. And even though I'm working with you directly now, Katie, I'm learning so much from you too. It's almost interesting because I feel like people look up to me and I'm at this level that people see. And then I feel like there's so much I need to learn that some other people know stuff that I don't know. And it's that whole imposter syndrome thing that we talk about quite a bit. But yeah, I mean, I guess this probably would be a good take into this, talking about leadership a little bit. Since we're all women leaders in the transportation industry and you being in finance, obviously you've probably experienced some similar hurdles throughout your careers at being male dominated, as we talk about quite a bit. Can you discuss some leadership strategies that have helped you most and perhaps where you see room for growth?
Yeah. So, and I want to hit home on that other point that Nicole brought, because I think it's super relevant. Not being afraid to have this kind of conversation, right? So many women, I think, are a little guarded and closed off from other women approaching them, and in being able to be that leader, that mentorship, that sisterhood that I think that is really growing out there. So, you guys definitely have carved the path by even putting the show together, but also the fact that I think one of the keys to my success is becoming a sponge, right? Like I want to learn from everyone and anyone. I'm not just about learning from women. I think that's I was about that topic before it was a cool buzzword, right? Because I think that's something to be able to talk about. But also the fact that it's important to understand that we also have stuff to learn from men too, right? Like there's plenty of, and I will tell you, some of my greatest mentors and greatest relationship today are strong males that have been huge champion and supporters of my career and of my growth and what I've got going on at all times. From my husband, who is a stay-at-home dad and amazing. One of the reasons, I can do it all, like you talk about, is because I just know he's got everything else locked up. And he knows that I know when to cut over and come back over. And, I call it the zig and the zag, right? We've got each other's back. But also, being at the transportation space, one of the only females at the male dominated executive table at times, or more often than not, really was one of the things that just helped me to feel empowered. But the key to that was not going that I have all the great ideas and I'm the only person with ideas. And Kristy, you and I talk about this regularly. Like, I'm open to hearing how they do things, how they got where they are, and why they got there, right? I know that there's a level of humbleness that I needed to have as I continue and do today continue to have, because I'm never, this person that's on a pedestal looking down. I feel like I've got this huge ladder in front of me that I still need to climb every day, but I'm always looking to learn who can I, have come up that ladder with me.
Yeah, and it's interesting you say that because I am in my 25th year in my career in this space. And I feel like I'm just beginning to learn in a sense, but it's just a totally different level, totally different role. And I feel like I'm at the bottom trying to climb up that ladder that you talk
Right.
about. Yeah, and I think the important thing is to recognize that different times in your career that you've learned different things at different times for different reasons, obviously. And with me being in that growing company, trying to learn those next steps, which I haven't had, the ability, or I just haven't been in a company larger than my own at this point. So it's interesting to hear insight though from other people, even from the smaller companies or the larger companies, and like you said, it's just have a voice and speak up and talk about it and ask questions.
I would say too, Katie, like to go off of what you're saying is like that humbleness, because I've looked inside of so many other people's companies and my own, and none of them are perfect. And there's no such thing. And so it's taking those ideas and hearing different perspectives so that way you can chase the excellence, right? There's no perfection. But having that mindset of you're constantly leveling up. And I think that's why, I'm always feeling like, okay, I'm getting to a foundation to where I feel good. And then I'm comfortable. And then I go, once I'm comfortable, that means I'm ready to do something else. Because if I'm comfortable, I'm not growing. And so I think a lot of, especially some of my male mentors, I don't know, some of them have this fire too that are like, you're ready, go get it. And I'm like, oh my goodness. Okay. So, I agree with you, embracing and then constantly like leveling up to your next best thing. You're always making your next best version of yourself. Right. So,
Nicole, so first of all, some of our male counterparts are the same person, right? And so that's pretty cool one in and of itself. But like also, it's interesting to have like that dynamic where I feel like we need to help women to be more of the person cheering the other woman on. And this kind of conversation is like, again, it's about being real and being open and honest. Like I literally saw you for the first time post COVID and like ran up to you and gave you a hug. Obviously, we did business together, but beyond that, I was just like, you are amazing. What you've built is amazing. I'm so inspired by you. And I wasn't afraid to tell you that. And I wasn't afraid to like also be vulnerable and share conversation. Right. So I feel like there's some people in this industry that need to get more into this circle of conversation and be less on this like protective nature. Because we can do a lot together, ladies, and more than we even realize if we put our minds and hearts together.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, certainly. I think it's what you just said about women and not, being afraid to go up to other women and asking them those questions. And I think it's women like us, right, that have to keep talking about it and keep pushing the envelope with other people in the industry, because I do feel like there was a movement started during COVID. Kind of when even this podcast came out, Nicole. I mean, specifically people putting their own podcasts out too. And I feel like that's kind of when it started. You started seeing all these women kind of coming out. And it's been cool to see, because my whole career, probably up for like 20 years, you didn't really see that. So I definitely think it's a cool thing now. But yeah, I want to go into a little bit about, so obviously a little familiar with Curant Full Advantage. You talked a little bit about that, since we're using your services and how those work, and which I think is great. But you want to talk a little bit about Frank Mango as well, and then also tell our listeners a little bit more maybe about the value that each of these companies bring, that you feel, to the table, to the customers.
Yeah. So Freight Mango is really what I consider like Airbnb for free, right? So they're literally giving the price structure, whether it be LTL, truckload, international. They're trying to become the marketplace, and be able to give those price and structure and be able to book it right there. And so what was really cool is I was approached about helping Freight Mango become a startup, and I've been with them since infancy. And we've been highs and lows when startups, right? And we're seeing the opportunity to become a huge brand in the future. And I'm super excited about the trajectory of that business. But who would have thought it would do 15 million first year? It was wild. It was a different marketplace. It was wild. 30 million year two. Just like the stories were pretty cool. As obviously with Full Advantage being providing the people to make the phone calls, do the invoicing, book the payables. We're there to be the extended arm when needed, the on and off switch when you're in merger acquisition mode, but also to kind of help when you're just like, I don't have the right team player, or I don't have the right person on the team, or maybe we're growing at such a rate, we need to know whether we really need this full time or not. So we're like a short-term solution, although I will say one of my largest clients is a $2 billion 3PL, and not my previous employer. They've been with me for over 4 years. And so, we've been helping them grow. We handle, just around $200 million of ongoing revenue for them through that team. And so it's really kind of, I think people come in with thinking Full Advantage is going to be the short-term ad, and they do end up just going like, this is easy. I like this. I'm going to keep going with it. And through Curant, we use the software to automate, right? So we're using the platform of sending out your invoices, onboarding your customer, and making sure they have a very easy to manage payment portal to make ACH, credit card, and even we have, $50 million debt facility built into the platform for short-term lending. So if your customer wants, net 60, they're able to get it.
Yeah, I think those are really, really good values for customers. And I will say, being a customer of yours, I think one of the things that I like about it is the supply chain experience. I think that just brings a whole nother level, to the game with these companies. So,
I have a question, not on the cuff, like not pre-planned, but this marketplace has like gone crazy, right? So we're hearing a lot of companies, having issues. Some of these companies going out of business, huge LTL lot. Yeah, I can keep going, right? So I would love to know, because I've been asked this question right now, like if you had to tell really anybody that's in our space, like what are best practices that they could do today with the market being where it is to protect themselves?
Yeah. So one thing I would say is a credit policy. You and I actually had that conversation, 2-3 years ago, right? Credit policy is so important when you're extending credit, and you want to be the person that's basically financing that for your customers. And then 2, making sure that you have a really sound process on the back end, as it relates to sending out the invoice, but understanding who has invoices open, And if you're onboarding your customer with an understanding of their payment terms, their credit line, and just an exchange of expectations, generally speaking, there's really one or two reasons they haven't paid you. And it's either they can't afford to pay you or they have a dispute from quoted versus billed, right? We've all heard those. So if you do that process, you've narrowed it down to two things. And if you have a collections team that's on it, making those phone calls, you'll be able to figure out which one it is fairly quickly. I think a lot of people, Kristy, we had this conversation earlier, one echoing on my heart goes out to the people at Yellow that lost their jobs, but even being $1 billion company, and I've been preaching this on podcast webinars and whatever else on stages for that matter, that it's super important that you have a sound back office because you never know what's going to happen, right? And for the people who did lose their jobs, this is your sign to go follow your passion and whatever your idea is, because there's no better time to execute. But on the other side of it, it's important to talk about planning and understanding how can I protect myself. And the people who I think are waking up kind of concerned right now are the ones that were like, we were all fat and happy for the last 24 months, right? And now it's like, oh crap, it's drying up a little bit. We all expected that to happen, didn't really know what it was going to look like. And here we are, right? So the best ones, I have plenty of clients that are hiring right now and growing, and there's probably a real run to the fact that they've been well managed and well positioned for this versus the ones that are laying off, going out of business, out of their compliance, that kind of thing.
So with the compliance piece, it's one of the things I had been asked is like, that you brought this to me because you actually stimulated our credit process, right? We have our Italian stallion, which I always say. Her name's Carmela. She knocks down doors to collect that money. She's amazing. But at the same time is like, again, back to best practices. So say I'm running a brokerage arm, or a brokerage division, and I start noticing, maybe customers could be slow paying or different things. Like, what should I take note of? And then how would I create the compliance around that? Like, should they be checking credit more often? Like, what do you think is best during harder? And I'm air quoting because it depends on who's speaking.
Who you are.
Harder, it's not, but challenging times.
Yeah, no. So one of the reasons we put $50 million debt facility into the platform is because we want to take away the risk. So if you need somebody who can't just pay you according to your terms, you're able to offset that risk onto the platform, and our partner who wants to do the lending and wants to help you. You get funded within 48 to 72 hours, depending on the weekend or whatnot. As soon as they're approved, and they want to approve at a 2% monthly fee. So your customer gets a $2,000 invoice. They have up to a 2% monthly fee on up to 90 days. So you're funded right before the invoice is even due. So it's not even past due, and the risk is now pushed on to the platform, and it's there for them to do the proper lending practices and all that. Our partner is really wanting to help grow, and so where you can set off risk there, take advantage of those opportunities. The second thing is, just make sure you're doing credit checks at least, twice a year, looking at how the lines look, what change in behaviors. You could get obsessive and do it every month. You could set up alerts and those kind of things, but credit information is only as good as what's being reported. And so I tell people, you're the best person once the relationship is there to know what kind of rapport you build, what kind of change in behavior, right, Kristy? Like you know firsthand what that can look like. It can look really, really good, and everything can look like it's gravy, but then when you start to dig in and you start to have conversations, you can figure out who they truly are when things go south.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think I'm learning a lot, obviously, recently with what, Katie is working with us on. And it's just interesting because, again, it's stuff that you think is so simple. And sometimes it can be simple, but you have to go beyond and look deeper into the situations. And especially times like this when you're talking about companies going out of business and whatnot. When COVID hit, just as an FYI, like, Euler's started dropping customers, and we have Euler's credit, in place for protection of our customers. And when you're shipping freight with customers and you start seeing like, we're only going to cover this customer for X amount of money, we got to look at our books and then, okay, what happened?
Right.
It does get scary. And because I think sometimes people get lost in, oh, it's $1 million account or $2 million, $3 million, whatever, and it's going to bring in X amount of GP. But if you don't get paid, it doesn't matter.
No. And
So,
that cash flow is so important to a company. It's
right.
how you can make or break yourself. And that's actually one of the number one things on why companies close. It isn't because they couldn't perform. It wasn't because they couldn't get customers. It was because their cash flow took them down. And so I think it's so important for everyone within an organization. You all play your part. Everybody does. And I think a lot of people just go, oh, that's our accounting department or that's our collections team. And the end. I don't care. I just brought the business in or I just moved the business. We all play a part in it. And it's so important to have everyone understand what their part is, whether it's billing as quickly as possible or, taking these little insights on what you're hearing from your customer on how their business is going. So the sales rep, are they going to want to come back to management and go, hey, I heard that my big customer is like having some issues. No, they're not. They still want you to almost buy those invoices from that customer. And so it's really important for everyone to be transparent and have their part in the whole thing because it's a domino. It's a total domino effect to an organization. It's crazy.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And one of the things too, like we have had people in operations that have come to finance to say like, oh, the customer actually mentioned this and they had no part in the finance side of that company, but they know they're struggling or something, not making payments. It's interesting because I think companies are pretty tight-lipped when it comes to that. But I think it's very apparent that like the people within the organization, when they hear that, no matter what level, like you mentioned, bringing that to light so that everybody is really looking at it and keeping their fingers on top of it. Right. And yeah, it's extremely important. And I think the other part real quick to hit on too is you touched about companies, living the high life the last couple of years, right? Making all this money. And the last thing you want to do is spend all that money either. I'm pretty big on, talking about equity in the company and keeping that money in the company for times like this. And I can say that I don't feel nervous because I know that I've done that where other companies haven't. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then
they went on shopping sprees of people and then didn't even manage those people because that whole job market flipped and then people were overpaying for people. They were spending a ton of money in advertising and, eccentric things for themselves. And it's one of the, like, I'm the same as you, Kristy. I have now company money invested. So it's actually making money and I can bring it back at any time. And it's like, I'm not freaking out when I have to talk to my banker trying to get my next round of my line of credit approved. They're like, how much you want? How much you want? I mean, and it's a tough spot, it's a tough marketplace for a lot of companies, but that organization is what matters to make it through these times. I had my old boss used to say, you always have to prepare for when it rains. Always prepare for when it rains because it will rain. And that's how we've looked at this.
Yeah, absolutely. Early on in my career, obviously, I went through a situation with my father where we had to sit in front of the bank and get asked tough questions. And I don't ever want to be in that position again, which is when I got control, making sure we kept money in the company because you just don't want to be in that position. And I think sometimes people have to learn the hard way, unfortunately, to get to where I would say our mindset is now. So,
yeah. It's so funny. I did a show with the chief economist of Euler pre-COVID, and I'm gonna find the tape. I'm gonna put it out at some point because he talked about how the logistics companies during the conversation when I was at Inside Arm, I hosted it through there, was a little bit of a risk for them, and they weren't gonna be the ones left holding the bag the second time around. And he started already talking about that it was going to extend through, whatever the next recession. He kept referring to as the next recession. I don't think he knew about COVID. He didn't know COVID was coming, but because arguably COVID actually had this influx of cash because nobody was spending, right? And everybody was shipping all their goods. So that's really what happened. But then when everything reopened, then it was like, holy crap, to Nicole's point, we're overpaying people. We don't really know what they're doing at home. And now we're kind of looking back and go, we're no longer afraid of asking questions, right? And so I think it was him though, and I'll find the clip at some point to talk about how like he talked about how logistics companies were a risk for him or for them. And so I wasn't surprised coming into COVID that that was going to be the area that probably got pulled back the most. And not everybody got offboarded. Let me be honest. So some of my clients did, some of my clients did not. And the ones that did not, it was the ones who had a solid back office, had a solid understanding of their processes and their cash and were reporting on time and those kind of things. That's what they're looking for, right? So you got to have those conversations early and often. And I always coach up, plan for the rainy day because you never know when it's coming.
Yeah, and when you have a good P&L and the cash flow, you can get what you want. When you don't, it's a lot harder if you can even get it, to be quite honest. So,
Yeah.
It's really hard to run a business when you're losing money and you're not making money. And your team, I mean, it really impacts your culture, because your team almost carries this rain cloud around them. Like, oh, we're working so hard, but we're still not pulling a profit out. There's so much to having that moving forward. And if the owner is stressed, on top of it, their leader, their management is all stressed and, everyone's working really hard. That's really a recipe for you to lose quality people and for them to go to a different organization. So again, I keep using this concept of a domino, but it just keeps going further and further down when you keep talking through all the things that can transpire from it. So we've got off tangent. So you should ask Katie some more of these questions. We're having some dialogue.
100%. But you actually hit on a point in the sales conversation. And like the last 2 years of my role as director of credit and collections for both Unishippers and worldwide corp stores franchises was I was on the road. I literally my husband didn't actually get to sleep next to me, where at least tonight I'm not sleeping. I'm there on a laptop, but I'm physically there because I was spent on the road teaching the salespeople that I was bought in on them and their success. And if we could work together versus against each other, meaning me and the team, right, that we would actually catch fire. And we did. And we did, right? So like the salespeople have to realize that they do have to come in and have those conversations to say like, are there boxes all around and you guys are just giving me the invoices? Because at the end of the day, what I taught them in those conversations was, yes, are you going to catch a quick hit, but you're going to end up on a hamster wheel trying to replace that. So you might bring it on and maybe you have it 6 weeks, 6 months, whatever, maybe. But the reality is you're going to go like this, and then you're going to go like this. And eventually you're going to get fatigued from doing that. I want to see you on the golf course and having long weekends and holidays on Fridays and Thursdays. But the best way for you to do that is to trust me. You don't want those quick clips. You want to spend your time and energy invested in the customers that are going to continue with you and they're going to compound. And the best salespeople, there's no secret that some of the highest producers within Worldwide Express and after my life at Worldwide Express are still connected with me today because of those conversations. And so if I could give any advice to a leader, it's don't think this is just a conversation with the back office side. You need to make sure that the salespeople understand that they too play a huge role because they're the eyes and ears. I'm not in the building. I'm not there when they're selling the deal. And they know whether somebody's going to be there or not be there. Maybe not 6 weeks or 6 months, but they know.
Yeah, that's some good advice. I know we're coming towards the end of the show, but I wanted to ask you one more question before we wrap up. I know it's overtime, but this is a special show. So as a co-founder, CEO, CFO, mother, coach, you must have some valuable insights on maintaining a healthy work-life balance. I don't know that there's ever really a thing, to be quite honest, but I like talking about how do you manage, right? So do you have any tips or strategies that you could share with us? Because I think it's pretty impressive the amount of workload you have just from knowing you. And I don't even know a whole lot, but I think I know enough to know that, like, how do you do all this and how does it work?
So first thing is I'm humble in the sense that my team is a lot of those things, right? So, and my team is defined as my team at Curant, my team at Full Advantage, my team at the Keich brand. Like I'm literally have somebody that is employed working to build, continued visibility of me. And so I've hired really well and built relationships within my team where I'm comfortable with the leadership. I'm comfortable with who's talking to my clients and making sure that I don't have to be the person. My best advice that was that it doesn't have to be me. I have clients that get me, as Kristy knows, and Nicole knows, but not everybody has to get me or has to have conversations with me. And so you can get my policies, processes, procedures, and execute them without ever even having to talk to me, which is really cool. And I'm very passionate about business and basketball. And that will be like my next reiteration of myself, being full honest with you. I want to create a nonprofit. I will create a nonprofit that brings that all together, and really helps to understand how business, basketball, financial literacy all goes together in my great big world. Because I really think the next iteration of me is impact and not necessarily financial gain. And so I've been a coach since the girls are 3 and 4 years old. They've had balls in their hands. My son is 2.5, does not dribble basketball, a little ball, but nonetheless. And so I'm disconnected when I'm disconnected. I'm dialed into whatever my kids are doing. It's the time where it's their time, but I also fully get dialed back into work, and they know, like, let's not interrupt, let's not do this. And it's really block scheduling and having great people. We have people that come and help Larry with, my husband Larry, with the laundry and the cooking and the cleaning and all that stuff. Because again, he needs a team of people to support him. So team is the theme of that answer.
That's an awesome answer. I actually, it was a lot, to be quite honest, and I love it because I think I've struggled with that. When you talk about being in the moment, I've had some of my friends tell me that they've noticed I'm not in the moment at the time because I'm so like focused on work, and I've been trying my hardest to stay out of business when I'm trying to spend time with family. So
it's funny because what I noticed, and I talked to my COO about this, I'm like, when he started, I felt bad because I was like almost to the point of burnout. And so I told him, I was like, I need to get back to some fun because just took too much on. It was just going too long, too hard. And so I took a bunch of vacations, which were planned, but I started noticing like I didn't know what I wanted to do if I wasn't working. Like that, and I was like, I didn't feel like I was really relaxing at some of these points because my brain was totally focused on that. But then I noticed when I took more of that time to actually get more into the mix of regular life, some of that stuff melted away. But it literally took, I think I've been off of work. That's why I have not been on social media. Like I've disappeared for the past like 2 months. So it's been like work here, but I got to a point, and I think taking note on when that's happening to you or about to happen to you, because I didn't crash and burn. I just kept going, you guys, I'm almost at my point. Like I have to do something. And so I went through that, and it's made a humongous difference. So I do want to know who's cooking for you, though, Katie.
Yeah, I was going to say
that at my house.
That's the one thing my husband won't do is cook. And literally, I'm like asking all these people who can cook and come cook because I love to, but I don't have time.
Listen, there's companies out there that do it. We like to do like the quick. He does cook. He'll do like a quick spaghetti, or if I say I want steak or chicken, like if I say what I want, he will execute and be like, "Yep, we'll make it happen. That's what we're having." But if I don't say anything, then we just end up grabbing whatever. But our daughter is going to be 12 next month, and like her training, her basketball training, and being in tournaments and all the coaching is like a whole other job, honestly. And so it's one of those things that we're just on the go constantly, and we figure it out.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's how I feel. And I think I need to get in a little bit better space for me, so I can do the things that I want to do, kind of like what you talked about, Nicole. I think I was telling you that for a while too. Got to kind of take a break a little bit. And it's interesting because like we give this advice, right? But we don't take it ourselves.
Right.
100%, right? Let's like, and I'm all seriousness. I'm leaving at 5:30 in the morning tomorrow, and I'm going to take my family on a mini vacation down to the beach. And Like my ultimate goal is to try to be, you know, I can't say I'm not going to work because it's not realistic, but to be as in present as I possibly can when I'm in the conversations and I am present. And I will say, believe it or not, since doing all the things, I'm more present today. I know you won't believe this than I was when I was climbing the corporate ladder. I really am.
I believe
Because
it
like,
because you get stolen moments that you could not, you were locked into a schedule. You had to like even sometimes stay late, fix things. And now you have the ability to like take those stolen moments. I call those my joy moments where it's like,
yep.
it's just joy. I don't care what you think. I gotta go. Like I gotta go. I'm gonna do that. Yes. So I
Yeah, and
believe,
because you're in control.
Yeah. No, I love it. Well, this
yeah.
was a very insightful conversation. Really enjoyed it, but we are at the end of our show, Katie. So thank
I
you
love
so
it.
much for sharing your personal and professional journey. For more information about Katie and her plethora of businesses and positions, visit currant.io, fulladvantage.co, and freightmango.com, as well as following her on LinkedIn. Thanks for listening, everyone. Stay tuned for more inspiring stories with the LLC podcast.